Hi, friends, SAP users, SAP consultants, experts, and indeed all those who are interested in learning about SAP S/4HANA. You're welcome to another training session. Um, it's been a series of training we've been looking at for for some time now. And please, if you want to get updates about all our previous trainings, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel and share. The essence of this training is actually to share the knowledge and also encourage knowledge sharing within the SAP community. So please share and you know support everyone within this community. Now it's your SAP FICO S4HANA consultant Kelechi Kelly Adele. We're actually going to be looking at a very, very important topic today that has to do with between the explore phase, and the realize phase of the SAP S/4HANA Agile Activate methodology. And it's very important. It's a very important topic that is needed for is required by this topic is required by the consultant, or nicely put, it's a topic that every consultant that is in a project is supposed to be very, very familiar with. So we're looking at the business blueprint document. So in our previous trainings, we have tried to really talk about the business blueprint, but in this training, we are going to be just focusing on this topic to really understand why this document is very, very important during your project, in your project implementation phase. Of course, technically, before you start a project, this is one of the major requirements, one of the major documents that must be, on hand, because it has to do with the business, it has to do with the business processes, it has to do with the analysis from the preparatory phase and data gathering, and every other activities that has happened within the project would find its way within the business blueprint. And of course, your configuration, the guide to your configuration is actually from this document. So you have to make sure. So we need today want to learn what the document is all about. What are the necessary requirements that is required from this document, and we're also going to see a sample of what the business blueprint actually is from a demo project. So why not stay tuned as we go into this course properly. So let's go in and see and begin this training. Okay, so what is the business blueprint in SAP? Of course, the SAP Business Blueprint is a detailed description of a company's business processes and system requirements. So basically, you want to start a project. Of course, the client has indicated interest to want to adopt SAP. There has been discussions. Probably a sandbox has been delivered to the client. A consultant has actually going through the process end to end to explain how SAP S/4HANA, especially finance, can deliver growth for the business and can help manage business operations. However, um, during the different phases of any project, there is need to first of all understand what the business is all about, understand the business operations, which we call business processes, and also the system requirements, more like my data migration requirements, master data requirements, risk assessment, change requests, everything that has to do with that project. Those requirements have to be in place. So the blueprint actually is a detailed description of all these processes. So it's like a Bible to the Christian. It is a key implementation document. Of course, I've stressed that. The SAP Blueprint document shows all the important configuration settings to adapt the ERP to company needs. Well, basically, outside configurations, it has to do with the organogram of the business. You're going to see that when we display a sample of a business blueprint from its date of inception, the organizational structure, the various modules that will be implemented, in the business from the SAP point of view, the standard requirements. And of course, we'll look at also where standard requirement does not fit into the project. We'll look at gap analysis, look at RISEF. So, but basically, the blueprint document shows all the configurations that need to that needs to happen. So basically, what the consultant does during configuration is to always refer to the business blueprint, because that blueprint has the direction for which the consultant needs to follow. The consultant cannot just configure anything. The consultant has to refer to the blueprint document when carrying out his configurations. A well-defined blueprint acts as a foundation for successful implementation of the SAP system. It includes the number of activities, events, milestones, and of course, deliverables. Now, why SAP Blueprint document? Why do we need to actually have this document during our project implementation phase? Now, the SAP Blueprint, what we call BBP, focuses on understanding, authenticating, and documenting project scope and specifications. All right. So during discussions in trying to understand the business process, it's important that the various, of course, the back and forth between the consultant and the business will result to some documentations as regards the all the necessary project timelines, project scope, the business organizational structure, the various modules that will be needed, RISEF issues, and the rest of them. So SAP Blueprint document template also helps to define its objective conceptually and practically. So, like I said, it provides direction to the implementation team and, of course, the functional consultants. Using this methodology, you can create a questionnaire for the system users. You can circulate these to business process and, of course, business process owners. They will fill the questionnaire and return to consultants. So this is basically explaining the methodology for which the business blueprint document is administered. So one of the methodology is the methodology of the questionnaire. So when after the during the preparatory phase, there will be a way of getting information from the client is to administer questionnaires. So these questionnaires are administered to people we call the process owners in various business operations within the business. So the process owner, let's say, for example, for raising an invoice or for handling bank transactions, the questionnaire will be issued. It's just a detail of what your activities are. That will help the consultant to actually carry out his configuration successfully and to be able to define a business process that will be included in the blueprint document. This process helps the consultant to understand how business is done and how they can implement the best process for implementing SAP. So that is very, very key, very, very important for your configuration and implementation. Now, how to create a blueprint document? Going to see that just a few steps on how to create a blueprint document. Well, why there are standard documents, but I feel the most important thing is to have these points so that you would actually, if you have an existing blueprint document for those who are already in a project, you can use this point to make sure that your blueprint document is actually standard. And also for smaller projects, you can, of course, make sure that your blueprint documents contain the points that I'm going to mention, because these have been taken from a standard business process document. So let's look at the steps. Number one, develop a process inventory. So it is the first step to making an inventory of all types of processes. So when we say processes, we mean end-to-end transactions. So let's say, for example, for invoicing, you need to, let's say, order to cash process. You need to ask questions like, what are your sales process? Do you have sales orders? Do you use quotes? Do you use inquiries? How do you make a sale? So basically, business tells you, oh, we raise a quotation, so that is noted down. Now, during when you raise a quotation, does it go for approvals? So okay, yes, 2, 3 managers have to approve the quotation, and after their quotation is approved, an invoice is raised for a customer. So that's a process. It's noted down. The so how do you send your invoices? Is it by hand? Is it through email? So and what's the document? What's the format of your invoice? It's because in most businesses, some customers will require invoices to be in a particular format, especially for the IOCs. So these explanations you get from the business, what are the tax implications on your invoice? What are the key information you like to see in your invoice? Will it be signed, online or manually? Who are those who would approve before an invoice is, printed? So basically all this process from start to finish for the core finance operations have to be, that's what we call the process inventory. You need to take note of all these processes and impute them. These processes have to be found in your blueprint template or document. Okay, in this stage, you need to also identify development needs like custom reports and enhancements, workflows. So basically, you look at the standards. Let's say, for example, you pick a customer invoice, you look at the standard invoice from SAP, and the client said, no, a particular customer requires our invoice format to have this column, a column for probably business sales rep, a column for, unit and measure, a column, different requirements. So this process inventory have to take note of all those requirements. If it's not available in a standard invoice from SAP, then of course we have to customize a form, do an enhancement, and of course for approval levels, for each of these documents, raise a workflow. That will be found in the RISEF document during your realize phase of your project. So it's important you understand the first phase is process inventory. The next is create a foundation for building the business blueprint. Now, this stage helps you to develop the scope of the SAP project. Here, you need to create a plan before beginning working on your new SAP system. So the guidance system, of course, you have to have your system security authorizations, various logins, the enterprise-wide training requirements, the scope definition document helps you to define process boundaries. It provides some basic information about every given process. So that foundation is key because at this point, you have understood the business process, but you have to define a workable plan on how these processes will be delivered. And of course, you have to also discuss with every other team member within the implementation team on how every consultant, the role every consultant will be playing, to ensure that the building of a business blueprint is robust and it carries all the scope of that project. Okay, now when you have a scope in mind, the next thing is to create a blueprint. So creating a blueprint involves understanding where a responsibility changes occur between two departments. The step needs to apply the information by explaining which department or individual is working for which part of the process from beginning to end. You also need to define the master data for focusing on key integration points and supporting organizational activities. So this is very, very important. Having understood the business process, you have to support the business in defining a workable, a plan for how, um, because it's a most likely it's a new system, they are not familiar with how SAP works. So it's important that you guide the team, discussions with the business, you define roles, define, you know, responsibilities for an order to cash process, for example, how many departments are in the company, who would be responsible for what, who has to approve what, how will the document flow, how will that document integrate with other modules like materials management, sales and distribution, plant maintenance, and the rest. And of course, at this point, all the master data that is needed, list of customers, list of inventories, you know, customer details, and everything that is necessary have to be gotten and help in developing your blueprint document. The next is estimate time and cost. So before setting goals for process, it's vital to have a baseline measurement. In this phase, you need to determine the cost and time for this process. This steps also benefits you to define the parameters that we use to set improvement targets for your business. So basically, one of the key to project management is the definition of scope. Scope has to do with the functions, and another thing would be to every project has a start and finish date, and of course, is within a particular budget. So looking at the business blueprint, looking at the volume of work, you can actually sit with other consultants and, of course, with your project team lead and define. Looking at the scope, you can, estimate the time, putting other factors together, and of course, the budget and the cost, um, direct cost and indirect cost for that project, cost of personnel, cost of consultants, hotel, movement, and all that. Now, after you have considered all this in developing your blueprint document, there is need that this document should be verified. All right, so it has to be shared within the project team. Of course, there will be meetings. You look at the blueprint document page by page in order to, like, say, I should be able to reflect the realities of the business, to be able to capture all the core business operations in each of those modules. This stage also allows you to get the support and suggestion from all stakeholders. So it's a collective responsibility from both the business and the consultants and the project team for that project. So page by page, the blueprint document will be looked at. Processes that are not relevant will be put on probably on another list, or activities that are not key to the project implementation or to the project go live can be stepped down. So, but this has to do with discussions between the project team and, of course, the business leaders. So once the blueprint is verified by both parties, the next stage is to deploy improvement techniques. So follow organized approach in improving business process by using methods like evaluating value-added activities, removing redundancy, reducing process timing, using automation whenever you can. This will help you create business value. So basically, value for time and resources would be key. As the project, hits the ground running, there will be need from once in a while to go back to the there could be discussions on new processes that the business needs, or processes that are not showstoppers for the go life of that project. That we need to prioritize on the various requirements or the various activities. And of course, where there are need for improvement, where there are need for adjustments, that discussions will have to be done. Then the next is to develop internal controls and metrics. Of course, any system without control would go haywire. So it's important that we have a internal control team that would check that the implementation or the activities is going according to the scope of the blueprint document. Anything outside the scope would lead to more time and more budget. And of course, um, that control is necessary, that we stick to the plan, stick to the requirements of the blueprint document in delivering our project activities. 8 is to conduct a trial run. Okay, so basically with the sandbox, we can do a dry run on what are the requirements in the blueprint document and see how um, how the implementation of that blueprint document has gone, how all the processes, relate with each other, whether the integrations are okay, you know, whether there was anything missing in the blueprint document that both the business and the implementation team did not take cognizance of. So that dry run is important. Also, if there are errors, that as a result of following the blueprint document, that can also be resolved. The next is implement changes. Of course, it's always in every project, either from the business side or from the implementation team. So as the project keeps rolling and activities are moving by, there'll be need to implement change management processes, making sure that the people who are the right people have the right information, the right people are put in the right positions to support the project. People are educated, people, because it's a new system, so there has to be a change management process to bring staff on board and to explain the benefits that the SAP S/4HANA system will deliver to the business so that they can improve buying into the project. Next is follow continuous improvement. This last stage, you need to follow continuous improvement concept. This stage is all about establishing new approaches or approach for implementing business process improvement. So I guess at the end of a successful project, the team has to come together and look at how to improve on upcoming projects, what were the lessons learned, what were the mistakes, and try to ensure that probably in the next project they can have a more they would have learned from the lessons from the blueprinting process and improve on that. So it's important that in developing your blueprint, you take note of all these very important points. So let's look at the benefits of business blueprint. We have blueprint helps end users to understand what solution could look like. So of course, it's very important. It's when I show you the sample, you will understand that that is what the project is all about. The blueprint document is the guide for both the business and the implementation team. Offer solid foundation to support organizational change. Very important change also in the mindset of the users, change in the mindset of also the implementation team. It helps to eliminate the risk of losing market share or reputation. Of course, template helps you to define all the critical success factors and key performance. It's very, very important that for every implementation or every blueprint document, you try to focus on the critical factors. Try to focus on the core processes that would cause or that is critical to the success of the business, you know. And of course, as time goes on, there is need to keep improving on what the document is, but it has to define what is critical to the business in terms of what SAP S/4HANA would deliver. And of course, performance indicators is key to see how the business and the users have fared so far. Provide project scope on time and budget. The benefits to implement tested, improved methodology. The blueprint document template offers better project delivery. Of course, it's a guide, and it's a very, very important document. And I believe that after this class, you would probably have understood when you cite a blueprint document, it would give you, having this at the back of your mind, it would actually help you appreciate just what the document offers and also how you can help improve that process. Okay, so thank you very much for having time. But before we go, we are going to actually see a sample of what the business blueprint document is all about. So just come with me. Okay, so on your screen is a typical demo business blueprint. I'm just going to go through the pages gradually and just focus on, letting you understand what the document is all about. So this is a project for ABC Limited. We have a steering committee. We have also the committee members from the group. So it's always, from the first page, you can see that it's a very, very serious document. And the business at the top level have to be involved in blueprinting. So it's a very important document. And the business will have a steering committee. The operational team will also have a committee, and step by step, they go through each of the pages of this document, because this is what would, at the end of the day, this is what you implement for the business. So they have to be sure that it is capturing all the necessary business operations and activities. Okay, so this is implementation. Here you have a page where there are basically signatures from each team. Okay. Okay, so this is just some of those pages you found. Internal use only. Okay, so we have purpose of the document. Purpose of the document is to determine business process requirements. We have the intended audience for this that are key to this process. We have the steering committee. We have the business process owners, department-wise. We have the core, who we call the super users, that will transfer knowledge to the end users. So this is an example of how the document looks like. So you have the table of content. You have the brief history of the business, right? You have the current software that the business is using. You also define the sections of this document. Of course, it's FICU, so you expect to have 2 sessions. So you have blueprint has been developed by documenting all inputs gathered from business process. So like I've explained earlier, so you can look at the vision for this activity. So this is basically to maintain books of accounts, to ensure security of financial data, to make sure that data are migrated and all reporting requirements are met. So you can see the stakeholders for this particular project: end users, finance department, management, and auditors, right? So you have the org structure of the finance department. You have the head, which is managing director. You have finance officers, vice president, finance, and just down to the end user of this information, right? So we have the org structure in a build, how the org structure in terms of for SAP, how you're going to implement things like the company code, the client, the group company, chart of accounts, and the coding, the business areas. These are, in SAP, we call them their organizational objects. You have to, by this time, you should have gotten this information from discussions. Now you have the business process architecture that defines all the activities that will be done, that will be required for this process. You have the general ledger master data, you have the vendor master data, customer master data, asset master data, and all that. You have basically all these informations, which the functional consultants, these are information from the business, which of course, the functional consultant will need during his configuration. So have these activities, you go and start configuring your master data, how do data migration, make sure your documents are fine, document numbers are there, the posting periods, and every other configurations are key. Tax configuration, asset configuration, banking, you have bank reconciliations. You can also have other modules like BCMs, HCM, you know, as part of this process, cash management, and the rest. So this is planning. We have studied the planning requirements and the implement the budgeting requirements spelled out at the command hand by way of planning in SAP. We have the various reports that are standard or that will be required by the business. So all these reports are listed in the blueprint document. And of course, not just listed, you have the name of the report, the purpose of the report, who is intended for. So basically all these reports are standard in SAP. After going through this, some of the end users or the process owner can actually want to get more reports, but these are reports as per modules, cost center accounting, internal orders. Then you have the business process mapping, where we start picking key information of a business. You have the company code, you have the chart of accounts, you have the business areas, you have the account groups, which would require the mapping to the GLs, right? So these are the ranges, fixed assets within this range, shareholders funds within this range. These are account groups mapping to the GL. So any GL you're creating will fall within this group, within this number range. So you have retained earnings account, which will be also configured. Fiscal year, the business will give you their fiscal year reporting, which we call the reporting date. We have the posting period variant, which would control the posting periods. Of course, you have the posting periods time intervals. Of course, for posting period, we have 12 posting periods. We also have different kinds of posting periods that will be important to the implementation. So basically, if they don't use the usual calendar period, of course, they can have non-calendar period, as part of their processes. It could be year specific or a non-calendar year. So, of course, during discussions, the consultant will configure likewise. So you have all the account types that are key to the GLs and that are key to the posting period. So you have to make sure that users are able to post to all these various account types. You have the number range, you have the field status variant, tolerance group, So what I'm trying to exchange rate. So you see, this document has all financial statement version. So we've come to module accounts payable. You look at all the activities on that accounts payable, which would involve your configuration. You have bank accounting, withholding tax, tax codes, accounts receivable, get all the informations that are necessary for this module. You have asset accounting. You have to define chart of depreciation, chart of depreciation keys, calculation methods, the method of depreciation, and of course, account class and asset master data. Then we are going to CO, where you define the actual costs, controlling area, cost centers, profit centers, and all those elements that are key to, reporting the cost, operational cost of the business. So you have the flow chart for the business workflow, right? How a process starts and ends. So you have start, general ledgers, check the chart of accounts. If yes, you proceed. If no, you create a new chart of accounts. Create a new chart of accounts. Sorry about that. And you have create vendor, you look at the vendor flow. So this is exactly what the business process it's all about. The business process, the blueprint document rather, this is what it's all about. And so from this, you can see how the activities, how all the business processes are mapped or are defined within the business process document. Very, very important. And with this, the consultant can pick each of these processes and configure and make sure that all the requirements that are within the blueprint document are reflected in the configuration, right? All right, so thank you very much for finding time to watch this. Remember, the essence is to share knowledge. So wherever you find this video, LinkedIn, YouTube, kindly share and subscribe to all the channels, And why not? If you need this document or you have further questions to ask, you can write me on my email or just do me a WhatsApp on the phone number on the screen. Thank you very much for your time. And remember to keep keep learning, keep sharing, and keep staying safe. Do have a nice day. Look out for other training videos or other training sessions. Especially we're going to be looking at just after this would be what we call the RISEF document, which is part of your business blueprint document. Thank you very much for your time and do have a lovely day.